be sick and tired of everybody with the envy look inside of their eyes, screaming godly. They try to end me, I beat the odds. She got a body, but she a thotty, I couldn't decide. She a decent vibe, let me speak my mind. I know this shit what happened, I just needed time. Straight bowling with my niggas trying to bleed the vibe. Bitch, niggas started talking and it blew my high. Money on my mind, that's a long talk. Ay, money on my mind, ain't the wrong thought. Ay, stumble in your bitch, where the thong go? Say, crumble up a brick and get it gone. Fuck these niggas on, I'm hustling until dawn. If I ever do something different, then I've been cloned. All I know is money and pussy and marijuana. All my crystals strong, it be putting me in a coma. Smell it in the aroma, play with me if you wanna. Send my head is to hit you, no doubt that you were gonna. I be so official as if rap is my diploma. Don't got a degree, but first degree is what I ponder. No wonder, killers feel what I say. Half of these rappers are faggots, other half actually gay. Now this all on this planet can say they turn me away. And if you don't like me, won't you say that shit to my face, boy? Why your ass hate, boy? I know it's cause I'm everything that you ain't, boy. I know you'll never relate, boy. But keep playing, I'll give you somewhere to lay, boy. My clique will ride, be sick and tired of everybody with the envy look inside of their eyes, screaming godly. They try to end me, I beat the odds. She got a body, but she a thotty, I couldn't decide. She a decent vibe, let me speak my mind. I know this shit what happened, I just needed time. Straight bowling with my niggas trying to bleed the vibe. Bitch, niggas started talking and it blew my high.
Hey yo, this is Cece from Pressure Boys, the best smoke on the East Coast, and you're watching the WARRmultiverse. Sheesh!
No more lies, gonna rise up, gonna touch the skies. Take a stand, we're done with size.
Oh yeah!
No compromise. War says no more lies. Gonna rise up, gonna touch the skies. Take a stand, we're done with size. Change it all, no compromise.
Okay. All right, good morning. Welcome in the wonderful morning it is. Today is episode 56 of the podcast. I'm having a lot of fun, and last week was a great conversation, great recap, great review of everything. Today we're doing, I decided to jump into this topic for a few reasons, and one of the reasons is that I continuously talk about centrist beliefs, how everything you do and look at and see is all really from your perspective. Everything is from your perspective. And when you even look into the universe and measure the universe, it's all from your perspective. It's from the perspective of Earth. It's from the perspective of, that person on the Earth in different points of the Earth. It's all, but when you're in a large mass, this is why science works, is because when you're in a large body of mass, like the Earth, for example, most of that centrism is found on the Earth. That's why we collectively, as people, all think the same, that we're in the center of the universe. That's why we thought that we were the center of everything for the longest time. Because everywhere you look from space, you look out and you see that you from your perspective, you're the center of the universe. If I go to Pluto and stand on Pluto, from there, that perspective is the center of the universe. It's not even close, but from our perspective, it's the same thing if I were to go to Sirius B or something. It's all the same thing. And so, but a lot of the things that we touch into are all the beliefs of a person, I should say, are all very centrist. From my perspective, I look out and I see something. Or it's, I'm trying to describe it in an abstract term. It's not necessary. I think we should just delve into it. So, a lot of the issues that we run into with all these different theories and things out there, cosmism, ancient alien theory, ufology, religion itself, is all based on those people's view of beliefs. Every religion today is all based on something that happened in the past, and then we continue to believe that this happened in a certain way. So, like, for example, we know, Jesus believed in peace and one thing, and later on, that belief of peace is true, but war is justified through the church because you're fighting on behalf of your religion, your belief, your center of view. Another thing to continue on with is that these beliefs are all just based on your perspective. So, one of the things I continue to touch upon is that when you look at all these people with their ancient alien theories and their this and that, and they say, oh, they're here to help us, they're here to make our society better, make our save us in the future from some calamity, help us out in some sort of way. It's all nonsense. You see, it's just taking the Christian belief of Jesus and God as one divine loving force and transposing it onto aliens. There's no way that they give a fuck about whether we live or not. Especially if they have a whole different perspective on time. Like every story tells us. We've touched on this before. The humans may only live to an average age of 77. But back in the day, like for example, we looked this up in one of our episodes, and the average age in ancient Rome was 25. I mean, unless you were like a noble and you had access to all your food and everything, and you weren't killed, maybe you could have lived to 40. Maybe. But like, oh my God. And then the gods, though, by contrast, they have a lifespan of 5,000 plus years. But how many years is that from their perspective? You see, from our perspective, they live for 5,000 years. But if they come from a planet that rotates much slower, has much more, or has a much more elliptical orbit around its star, or a wider orbit around its star, whatever, maybe time on their planet is different. Maybe from our perspective they're 5,000 years old, but from their perspective they're still only 77. Maybe that's the way it is for them. Because we know that the gods in the past all existed as flesh and blood beings. So says all the books and whatever and cultures. Even if they didn't, let's placate the idea that they did. Say they were flesh and blood beings. How is it possible they live for 5,000 years if they're the same flesh and blood as us? Well, from our perspective, their lifespan is longer. They're immortal. Because if we only live for 77 years, them for 5,000 years is an eternity for us. If you go ask the average person what they think the word ancient means, give it a year. Most people say 500 to 1,000 years. But if these gods lived 5,000 years, they're beyond ancient. They're immortal. They're not really immortal. They're flesh and blood just like us. They get diseases and get sick. They can get killed just like us. And this is exactly what the ancient books say. They say the exact same thing. There are multiple stories of when Zeus was chained up, poisoned. All these other gods are poisoned, stabbed, killed. You hear the story of what about Prometheus? Every day Prometheus has his liver eaten out by an eagle. Well, if he was immortal, truly immortal in the sense, the eagle wouldn't be able to eat his liver, wouldn't be able to do anything. The eagle would do nothing. It would just try to peck in, and if it could even land on it, it would try to peck in and realize that it was hitting up against an impenetrable object, and then eventually fly away, because it needs to go find some food somewhere. So he can be wounded, he can be stabbed, his skin can be penetrated. So he's not a immortal being in the sense of purely divine and purely immortal. But from our perspective, because he lives for so long, he's immortal. But he's not. And all these ancient gods were just the same. They had longer time spans. So their longer time spans gave them the perception, from our perspective, of immortality. But they could be wounded, they could be killed, they could be poisoned, they could be all sorts of things the same as flesh and blood man. It's just that they lived far longer lives. So if you didn't kill them and they didn't get sick from some sort of disease, they didn't die. They lived for 5,000 years. Or more, or less, ish. And what's interesting, too, is you hear, for example, in the story of Prometheus, this is where ancient alien theory, I think, starts to get credence, because Prometheus, every day, the eagle comes, pecks out and eats his liver, then they heal him up, and the next day he does the same. We're talking about regrowing an entire human organ functioning inside the body in a few hours. Sealing the wound back up, clean as a whistle, like it never even happened. What you're talking about here is misidentified technology. You don't know how he was healed, but we know today that we could heal things and heal people using our modern science. Well, what about 1,000 years from now? What does our modern science look like? What about 10,000 years from now? What does modern science look like then? Would I be able to walk into some device and come out completely clean of all wounds and not a blemish on my face? My beard is completely shaven. I just walk into the device. It showers me, shaves me, heals my wounds, gives me my vitamins for the day. I'm all good to go. And well, who's to say that the gods, quote unquote, couldn't do the same thing? Because I think, people think when you say the aliens that are here and whatever, you think they've been here ancient, you think 500 to 1,000 years. But from our perspective, that's ancient. But what about from the gods' perspective? That could be a blink in the eye. You might never even realize. They might fly by and just look out at us from wherever their vantage point is, high up in the stars, and maybe watch 100 years go by in a few minutes. Because from their perspective, time is different. It's all relative. But it's all centered on your perspective as well. It also has to do with, as we know, gravity, mass, and rotation, revolution. It's all perspective, relative, and measurable. In fact, that's all time really is a measurement. But what I think we need to focus on is that through looking at the world from the God's perspective, we might be able to learn a little bit more about ourselves. When you look at for example, if you read the Torah, you hear the story, everybody knows, even Christians know the story of Moses going up to the mountain to get the 10 Commandments. And he goes up and he's gone for 40 days and 40 nights. And on the 41st morning, he comes back. The text says that Moses did not eat or did not sleep. 40 days and nights passed from our perspective here on earth. But if he didn't eat and didn't sleep, probably was only like a day for him. Maybe it was only even a couple hours. Maybe he was there for like 8-9 hours, I mean, we've all done a full day of working without eating anything. It fucking sucks, and you're starving afterwards. You might be a little grumpy, which might explain why he destroyed the tablets. in the beginning, had to go back up, get some more tablets, come back down. Gone for another 40 days and 40 nights. I think it was less that time. I think it was less because they had already written it down. I'm sure, the Elohim had a copy or something. They probably just rewrote it down real quick. Was like, oh, my bad. He's like, Dad, I'm so sorry. He's like, all right, no problem. I'll just type it out real quick. Just have my secretary do it. Probably exactly what would have happened, because they're extraterrestrials. They have advanced technology. Funny thing is the word Elohim or Elohim is both singular and plural. Well, if it's plural, that means there's more than one God, case closed. It doesn't mean that there is no God out there, all divine force that created the universe and blah, 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 and continues on, omnipresent and all existent and whatever throughout the universe. Doesn't mean that there isn't one of those. Very well could be. But what we're talking about is not that. Somebody asked me the other day, this was like a few weeks ago now, what do you really believe about it? What changed your mind in years ago and whatever? Well, I grew up in a Catholic home, Christian beliefs, everything. You go to your communion, you go to church, you read the Bible, you take you have the religious class, blah, blah, blah. But we would sit there and read the Bible. When you go to church, the priest talks to you about an all-omnipotent, all-omnipresent God who loves everything, loves everyone, is all around, all the time, sees everything, knows everything, creates everything, is part of everything. It's the universe. It's all everything together. That's not what the book says. If you read the book, it sounds like warring kingdoms in medieval Europe and space-faring creatures flying through like Star Wars. It reads like some of the best fantasy literature I have ever read or could ever read and write. It's phenomenal. That's why people read it and say, oh, this is just a story. This is just nonsense. Because you look back and you read it and you say, how could these fantastical things be true? There were no wars in the sky, because if there were aliens in the sky, we would know about it today because of historical record keeping and all of this. Well, would you though? The United States government during World War II employed thousands of people for the Manhattan Project. Made everybody sign non-disclosure agreements, keep this secret. Nobody said anything. Thousands of people. This proves the government can keep a secret. What about in 1952 and then again in 1955, how the UFOs flew right over Washington, D.C., right in the White House? Nobody talks about that. From that day on and now, nobody talks about it. Yet it happened. Thousands of people witnessed it. Millions of people witnessed it. It was played on TV. There were press conferences about it. Yet nobody talks about it now. You don't know about it now. That was 70 years ago. You don't even know about it. 70 years ago might as well be 1,000 years ago to you in your brain. It was ancient news, ancient history. It's, from our perspective, that was so long ago. Yet, how long ago was it for the gods? Maybe on their schedule they wrote down that they got to make, on Wednesday, they got to do a drive-by. And then on Saturday, they got to follow up and maybe bring over some coffee and donuts for breakfast. And, it's just that Wednesday was 1955 for us, and Thursday was, 2032 or something. It could be that many years ago. And then so Saturday when they get here to bring coffee and donuts for breakfast, could be like another 100 years from now. You don't know. I don't know. We don't know. Who knows? Maybe they, from their perspective, they think that they're helping us by doing something, flying by, giving us notice that, hey, we're not the only ones, and yet, it's gone. For example, what if those UFOs they witnessed in 1955 over Washington were the same exact ones that Constantine witnessed in 312 AD? The ones that he said were the giant flying cross in the sky that flew overhead and gave him the Christian symbol of belief, and then he declared that if he won the battle, he would convert to Christianity and convert all of Rome to Christianity. And he won the battle, converted to Christianity, converted all of Rome to Christianity, and that's what happened. Now, you could just say, oh, this was a hallucination because, we know for historical record that his mother converted to Christianity like years and years before. I think it was like 10 years before or something like that. And she was all heavily into Christianity and brought it to him, and he could have, had her ear for all this time and noticed everything, and then just decided after all this time that once he became emperor, he was perfectly, he was going to go and convert it to Christianity and do it publicly because nobody can stop him because he's the emperor. Okay, I accept that. That could be possible. However, it's also written in the account, multiple accounts of his troops also seeing the same thing. So this wasn't a hallucination, or if it was one of those mass hallucinations that people see somehow, which I know that there have been studies that say that they prove that mass hallucinations are possible. Okay. Also tricks of the light, etc., different things like that. But let's just say that there was something up there for argument's sake. For this argument, we're going to say that on Wednesday, they came by and said, you know what, speaking of coffee, let's have another sip of my coffee. Nope, cold. Got cold. We need more coffee. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that in 312 AD, when Constantine saw the flying cross in the sky, the quote-unquote UFO, the unidentified flying object, when Constantine saw that, let's say that that was Tuesday. All right? Tuesday comes, they fly by, they're like, oh, these guys, they're poor, diminished savages, fighting amongst each other, looking down from them. Ugh, God, they're ruining this beautiful landscape. I was just coming here, flying by on my vacation, and then all of a sudden I hear all this noise, and I'm trying to lay out by some palm trees. And I go jump in my car, and I move across the sky to go see what's going on. And well, there's this battle going on. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to take a nap under this palm tree over there. And I gotta fly over, turn on my bright lights, And then down from our perspective, we see those Constantine sees those bright lights, and from whatever angle or something he was on, it appears like a cross to him and to others. Maybe there was, one of those giant ships that can split or something. Who knows? And and then I turn on those lights and I'm like, bruh, will you keep it down over there? I'm trying to take a nap by this palm tree. And then I vanish. I go back, take a nap on the palm tree. Then I'm at dinner. And I realize, I'm like, those people down there, they were fighting. Maybe I could do something to help them out. Maybe on Saturday, I'll bring them coffee and donuts. Go over there. Fly by on Saturday. What the hell? There's no people warring. There's a whole city here. There's multiple different countries, and look at this. And we fly over and we check out the different things. And dude, look at what these people did in like a week. They're crazy. They're hard workers. They're an organized society. They're like ants. They just work together and put everything together and do it quickly. And they get it up and they build structures and all these great things in just a few days. But from our perspective, it's 1955. 1,600 years have just passed. But from their perspective, it was less than a week. What if on a microscopic scale it's the same thing? We know it's not the same thing on our planet, because we know from multiple studies that we'll have this, our natural circadian rhythm generally stays with the rotation of the planet, and this is true for many species across the planet, if not all species. But we know that it's true for many species. I was currently listening to this thing where they were talking about how species of rats and how they would put them into isolation chambers and measure their differences of time, and how they learn time by pressing different levers and receiving cues and at different measured intervals. And if they press the right one at the right time, then they knew that the rat had learned to press the interval by associating pressing the interval with a period of time. But you could also say that they've just been conditioned to know that after a certain period of time, if they press this button, they get that treat. So it's a little, to me it seems like the test has an inherent bias, but we'll keep listening and reading. So anyway, from those aliens' perspectives, they came by. They first were chilling by that palm tree on Tuesday, decided to stop by on Saturday, and for coffee and donuts, and 1,600 years went by. For us. For them, it was a couple days. It's the same thing from the reverse perspective.
Smoke weed every day.
Oh, what up, Kush? Kush, long time no see, bro. Yo, for real, bro. Everything is crazy. Just for you, bro, we're going to hit the bowl. Just for you. Also, take a message from the Pressure Boys.
Hey, yo, this is Cece from Pressure Boys, the best smoke on the East Coast, and you're watching the WARRmultiverse. Sheesh.
Word. Hit that shit. That's what I'm saying. All right, so but what I'm saying is these, from our perspective, we only live for 77 years, but if Tuesday to Saturday, hypothetically in this situation, is a couple days, but from our perspective, 1,600 years went by. It could be that that's the reverse is true for their aging. From our perspective, 5,000 years have gone by. But from their perspective, only a few, decades have gone by. 5,000 years for them, maybe 77 years on average for us, is 5,000 years on average for them. Because their home planet has a different everything. It's different perspective, different time, and then from them traversing the distance between our world and their world, time is also altered. Unless they have some artificial gravity source that, mimics their home world, going out into space in a spaceship, it's over. There's no gravity. You're also kind of get to be like this jelly being. You can be like a blob. Kush. And then, so everything is relative to our centrist perspective. One of the things I hate hearing about, for example, with, like on Ancient Aliens or something, or other Ancient Alien theorists, I don't believe that these people are here to help us or not help us. I think thinking in either way is from our perspective. From their perspective, it could be a survival mechanism. It could be their genetic pre-programming. Maybe, for example, they're a society who goes out and conquers multiple different worlds by imprinting their genetic code into a species, and then that species grows up on the world and becomes, that species planet. So, for example, we might be humans on Earth, but it might be possible that you go to another planet, for example, like let's go to the star Sirius B and the planet rotating around there that the so-called aliens come from, and we'll sit there and say, well, damn it, Kush, now I'm high and I'm losing trains of thought. I was high already, that's the key. I was fucking stoned. The whole point is that when you go there to that planet, and then you traverse back and forth. Hold on, I just jumped points. Now I remember. We're back. You might go to that planet in Sirius B and find human beings there. Maybe not exactly like us, but pretty close. A hominid type structure with 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a nose and a mouth, standing upright. You may go to another star and see the same thing. You may go to dozens of other stars and see the same thing. In fact, some ancient astronaut theorists have reasoned that the 9 worlds that many of the ancient theories talk about, ancient beliefs talk about, could in fact mean that there are human beings or hominid type beings on 8 other worlds in the universe, meaning that the Homo sapien gene, or a variation of it, exists in those different places on some level, but we all have one common ancestor. It's very possible that that is the case. Maybe not 9 worlds, maybe 2, maybe 2,000. Who the hell knows? But it's very possible that there's a species out there who feels that it is their duty to procreate the universe. Maybe on some misaligned belief that, they're the best or whatever, or that there's not enough life in the universe or something, But that's from their perspective. From our perspective, they're a conquering species, going from world to world and conquering that planet and inhabiting it and altering with their hominid DNAs. We know that there have been multiple hominid species on this planet alone. What if there were always multiple hominid species, and then those hominid, then they go to other planets? Say, for example, we're the hominid species, right? And they come to this planet and they start messing with our DNA and all of this and making us into one species, and then they wipe out the rest, or we conquer the rest or assimilate the rest and we become one species. Well, that's not good. From the perspective of the hominid creatures on that planet, we are a conquering alien armada coming into our planet and taking over. That's literally what they would be. But from their perspective, they could think that they're doing God's work. Maybe they believe that by going out and seeding the universe with their genes, they're literally doing the work of God, because God wants there to be life in the universe. That's why He created life. Maybe they believe in God, and maybe that's why we believe in a single God, because they believe in a single God. And either they taught us that, or it's in our genes, or something. And if you look at the ancient books, and and you plot on a timeline of our planet different beliefs, if you look at it, in the very beginning, all cultures agree that we all believed in one God. Then later, we believed in nature spirits. Then those nature spirits got names and we became polytheistic. Then, over time, our ideas changed. Our ideas changed, our knowledge of the universe changed, our education changed, and we changed our beliefs to become a singular believing culture again. A singular God believing culture again, excuse me. But the point is that if you look at it and read the stories from those times, what you hear is that there are gods fighting in the sky. Read the Mahabharata in India. Read the book of Genesis in the Bible. Read almost any story. Look at the 15th century woodcuts from Germany. I mean, they're just... These gods and multiple gods fighting have been in our lives and seen from our perspective for generations, for centuries, for millennia. We've been talking about it since at least 5000 BC with the Sumerians. we touched on it last time, how the Sumerians and the country of Sumer was about 5,000 BC. 5,000 BC. Excuse me, was about 3,000 BC, 5,000 years ago. Now, if you look at the Jewish tradition, we're in the year about 5,535, I think it was, or something, 5,500 something, okay? If you read the Torah and know that Abraham was the leader of his village, and he comes from the city of Ur, which is a city inside of Sumer, and he is told by the Elohim that it's time to leave and follow him or them, because it's a both singular and plural word, and goes in search of the promised land that they will show you. Right away, you have two things. You have one being talking to another being, or multiple beings talking to one or more other beings. And then you have knowledge of the future given, belief in the future given. You have understanding of the world given. You have trust, power being displayed and shown. Well, that was about 5,500 years ago. So it makes about sense that that would be the time that they count from, because that's when their whole Jewish tradition began, when Abraham listened to the word of God and left the city of Ur to go find the Holy Land or the Promised Land. Makes a lot of sense from their perspective. But from the God's perspective, how much time passed for them? What happened for them on earth? What and why was it so important to leave, for him to believe in their faith and not the other faith? Because we know that the Anunnaki were the deities of the Sumerians, not the Elohim. Now you might say, oh, they could be the same thing, it's just a different language. Well, how is that possible? They come from the same city. It's the same language. In fact, Zechariah Sitchin is quoted in saying that the Jewish Torah and their language and understanding of the time helped him translate the Sumerian texts and the cuneiform tablets. Why? Because they come from the city of Ur, which we now know existed through archaeology. So now, what we need to understand is that, how should I frame this? In having Abraham change his beliefs, make his followers and patrons, because he was some lord of an estate or something, and probably had like regular people leasing land from him so they could farm and make money or whatever. They followed him, having him follow them and them follow Abraham, and the people follow Abraham, and all of them together following the Elohim, inherently states that the Anunnaki are different than the Elohim, which means that we have two different species of gods. And we know that these gods are just extraterrestrials. By definition, they're not from this planet. Whether they're real divine beings or not makes zero difference. They're not from this planet, they're extraterrestrials. Case closed. Even angels, even God in the Bible, our Father who art in heaven, that means he's not here. He's up there. That's literally an extraterrestrial. Case closed. Because he's not from this planet. And, you know, what's unbelievable is that it's written right there. They had to go away, and Abraham and his followers were the chosen ones who would be shown the truth by the gods or the extraterrestrials, and chosen to leave in order to get away from the false gods or the false deities of the Anunnaki, of the Sumerian beliefs. So right away, you have an obvious statement that there are two different extraterrestrial species out there, and they don't get along, because if they got along, there would be no reason to believe in one versus the other. They would be the same. They would all be the Elohim. They would all be the Anunnaki. There'd be no difference. There'd be no reason to squabble and fight and have different beliefs and different religions, because you'd be the same. So we know right away that there are multiple different factions of extraterrestrial species out there, which means that they all have different agendas, because if they're doing different things to compete with each other, they have different agendas for us, for themselves, for everything. Probably mostly for themselves, because every society, whether on this planet or on any planet, by its own inherent nature, would develop a centrist view of the universe and beliefs that instinctively are their own beliefs, because and are all about themselves, are self-centered, because that's their perspective on the universe. Think about every human you meet. Every human loves to just talk about themselves, loves to tell you about what's going on in their life, what's new in their world, you know, but then only the good people ask you about what's going on in your world. But in reality, it's going on, either way, it's only from our perspectives, from that person's physical perspective. Every single person views the world through a lens, and the lens is your eyeballs. And right away, I'm saying your eyeballs because they're your eyes. They're different from my eyes. On a very basic level, we know that we all also have different levels of vision. That's why some people wear glasses or contact lenses, because you need to correct your vision to bring it to what is considered to be about the average for every single person. I know that I have above average eyesight because I have 20/10 eyesight. So right away, I see more things from my perspective than you see from your perspective. It's totally different because we have different eyesights. Now, is it 100% different? Of course not. Because on this planet, we all see pretty much the same thing, but different levels of detail, and then other details based on our mental perception and our past experiences. It's a combination of things. People like to look for one reason and one reason only for things, but it's not always one reason and one reason only for things. Sometimes it's more. Sometimes it's dozens of reasons for one thing. And, you can't always just look for one reason and one reason only. For example, one of my favorite things is I like to talk about how humans were when the gods were here present on Earth. These gods were very present on Earth. They were Zeus, Odin, Thor, all of them. Ares, Jupiter, Hephaestus, Thoth, Set, Osiris. They were all different beings, some of them the same, some of them, a little bit different names but the same exact beings. And that's how it is. But they're not always exactly the same. We know, for example, that they have different beliefs in how they go about things. So if we look in how I mentioned in the beginning, that or in the beginning of this part of the rant, I should say, is in the beginning there was a one God belief. Then we believed in nature spirits. Then we believed in multiple gods. And finally we're back to one God belief. Well, if we put that in a timeline, we might have believed in one God because there was one species who came here in the beginning, as is written in multiple cultures and multiple texts, and came here. They had one representative who came down, helped us out, said, hey, we created you in our image. And they say, who's we? And they say, us. And we created you, and now we're going to go, and here's a little bit of base knowledge. Here's a Swiss Army knife, here's a couple matches, and we'll be back in like a week. But what he didn't tell him was a week for them was like 10,000 years or something. So they leave. Then we begin to equate all these things to nature. We understand that the world is making these things, that the world we live in is making these different things. These storms, for example, a storm coming in is not the work of some angry god. It's just the work of different motions on the planet. And maybe they didn't understand the mechanics of weather, but they understood that different things happened on the planet to cause other things to happen. They understood it as a cause and effect ratio. They didn't maybe understand it in the way we do today, but they understood it on some sort of level. That's because they believed in nature spirits, because the gods left. There were no gods here. Then different gods came, took over, enslaved us, possibly did whatever for their own beliefs, possibly maybe they wanted to be worshipped as gods because they realized we were primitive, so they came down here. Then, after they came down, they chilled. They would come down and go back up to their spaceship or their home planet or whatever. And then all of a sudden, the other gods, the original God, it's a note to point out that this monotheistic belief is that, in all cultures, is that this is the original God is taking over. Well, who would be the original God? The original extraterrestrial that came here and was that ambassador and told us, 10,000 years ago that they created us in our image. Well, he came back that 1 week later. The difference is it was like 10,000 years from our perspective, and saw that there were these other beings here trying to be as great as him. Well, luckily for him, he was about 5,000 years older than this other species, so they had more weapons, more things, a bigger army, and even though these other gods, quote unquote, were formidable, written in all the stories, eventually they fell to the will of the Almighty God, or the first God, the original God. And if you put it in that perspective, and then this God comes in and reasserts himself, right? Reasserts himself in our beliefs, reasserts himself militarily, does all these different things. Then he's like, all right, we took care of these bozos, and don't you go believing in them again. And listen, you send up your buddy, Moses, and or Abraham, and we're going to go talk, and I'm going to give you like a list of rules. And you go out and tell the people, and I'll be back in like another week. And, this time it'll be less than a week. Because after I left for a week last time, it was I came back and the whole world was taken over by these aliens. So I'll be back in 3 days. Goes there. 3 days, comes back later. It's now, instead of being the time of Abraham, it's the time of Moses. Comes back. Again, we're believing in multiple gods. This time the gods aren't on the planet. Now we have to communicate with them through divine sources and mediums and people who can interpret the will of the gods for us and take some drugs or hallucinations to be able to understand the divine who aren't here anymore. And why are we doing this? Because we want them to come back. We liked when the gods were in our presence. They helped us out. And even though they may have not been so nice or may not have been or may not have been good, we liked that they were here because they brought us knowledge, they brought us this, they gave us food, all these other things. And all we had to do was just worship them a little. There's no problem. And but we want them to come back. So we believe in them. Well, they're not coming back because they were wiped out by the original God. And then he says, well, we're going to come back in 3 days. And he comes back 3 days later, and it's, 1,500 years later, and now it's the time of Moses. And he sees that we're worshiping these beings to bring them back. And he says, no, dude. I freaking told you that it's me you got to worship, us, the Elohim, not these other aliens. What the fuck? So, come on, send up your buddy. Pick one. Moses, all right, you. Moses, come on up. And here, we're going to write down these rules. These, you know what? They're not rules anymore. They're freaking commandments. I'm commanding you to listen to them and to follow them. Write them down, go back down. Moses, being devout believer, goes down, sees that they're back to worshiping the gods again after a little over a month. And he's all pissed, goes back up, gets more writings. That? It's because my voice resonates. But anyway, so he goes, yeah, it's like a combination. We we need a better mic already, bro. Don't worry. No, it's fine. I lowered it a little. I was actually thinking about that a little earlier, because I noticed it keeps getting close to the edge there. Yeah, I just need a better mic. I just need like one of the standing ones. Yeah, I know. There's something wrong with this one microphone. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, But no, these, so he goes there. From his perspective, it's been, a couple hours. But from our perspective on Earth, it was a little over a month, 40 days. We know it's only been a couple hours because it's written down that he didn't eat, didn't sleep, wasn't tired, didn't have anything. They sat there and wrote down some notes, and then he left. It was like, going to your buddy's house for dinner. You're there maybe for a maximum of 3 hours, and then you go home. It's not, it's not like you're there for a week, cramming in the library for finals, and or waking up with your God of War to finish your projects that are due. And so I don't even know if he heard that, Tinker. So no, but the problem is that everything is relative to our perspective. I think that it's totally nonsense that these beings are here to help us in any way that suits us. I think it all suits them. And whether it helps us in genetically or not is probably just a byproduct of what the goal is. It's probably just like them helping us and giving us this knowledge probably furthers their goal of having their genetic imprint on the entire universe, of literally bringing life to the universe. There was an episode earlier where I theorized that it may be possible that angels might actually exist, but they're just a genetic different species on the planet than we are. They, for example, might be a species that believes on their world, just like we do on our world, in a God. And they wanted to go out, and maybe they were unified in their belief in their species and God and their whole species, and maybe they wanted to go out into the universe and find God. Maybe something similar to Eastern European cosmism that came about in the late 1800s. And what if that's what they did? They went out in the universe and they searched for God, the real God. And what if they found him? What if they found the one true omnipotent force that's out there in the universe? What if? It's possible that they did. It's possible they didn't, of course, but it's also possible that they did. And then they went out and they forced those beliefs onto other populations and civilizations on the planet. And on other planets, I mean. And they went down and they said, no, we're going to make you in our image because we're a divine source, because as far as we know, we're the only extraterrestrials to ever find the true God. Planetary species to find the true God. We know that that's the case, but what it also might be is that they found the God, went out there, and then he said, okay, now that you found me, I want you to go be my ambassadors, or that's how they interpreted it, or whatever. And they felt it was their mission to go out into the universe and pass along these beliefs in one divine source, in one divine being, to the rest of their species out in the universe. The problem is they're not the only species in the universe, so they constantly have to go and keep checking up. Maybe they kept doing this for centuries and thousands of years, and then eventually they did it for so many centuries, and they realized that they couldn't just leave us to our own devices. So maybe they stayed here and came here and put their own people in charge here. Maybe that's why we have a recollection of the gods physically being here. And then maybe they left again because of whatever their time scale is for their ultimate goal. Man, we didn't even get to talk about like gravity and time perception yet. I think we might have to do another one. I mean, I did talk about that a lot in time dilation. But in our episode called Time Dilation, but I like talking about time. So yeah, we didn't even get to gravity yet. So then, when we go to another planet, what would we want to do? We might want to go and be their gods. Maybe we want to play God for a while. Excuse me. Maybe we want to play God for a while. Maybe that's the point. Maybe that these species go to other planets, play God for a while, because somehow that evolutionarily helps somebody. I don't know who, but you know, maybe from their perspective it's the good plan. I think that these beings are doing a combination of things. Maybe they believe in one true God, maybe they don't. Maybe they believe that they're the best because they don't believe in a true God, and so far they've been more powerful than everybody else. Who knows? Maybe they just are a conquering, enslaving species. And the way they enslave us is by making us think that we're alone in the universe, and they do whatever they want here and take our money and get worshipped and, you know, take our gold or whatever, and natural resources. Maybe they love that. Maybe that's exactly what they want to do. Maybe they want our natural resources, and to keep us distracted by believing in nonsensical gods is a great way to do that while they rob us blind. You know, it's like focusing, you know, on my hand over here when my other hand over here is doing something that you can't see. You know, and so it's like, you know, you're maybe that's their perspective. Maybe what we're seeing with UFOs in the sky and all that, maybe that's their precursor to an invasion. Maybe it's just from their centrist point of view that it's going to take them like a couple weeks or months or maybe even a year to get their armada ready. And except that a year on their planet is like, you know, 8,000 years on our planet. So maybe that's why for the last 5,000 years we've been seeing all these UFOs everywhere, because and all these different things in the sky and different beliefs and religions and stuff and beings, and whatever. Maybe they're the frontal force. Maybe they're just scouting out. Maybe those are the scout ships, and they're scouting out their conquest. Maybe they're planning, making maps of the world and planning on how they're going to invade at which point and which place and at which time and all that. And they just got to wait for a year, or a few months until the Armada gets here. It's just from our perspective, that few months is really a few thousand years. And that's why we keep seeing this. Could be a number of things. But I think that by saying that they're here for our benefit, for our will, for our belief, is centrist and just changing God from God to aliens, believing the same exact thing as believing in Christian God. It's just that you don't call him God, you call him an alien. But it's the same exact belief. It's just take out the word God and put in the word alien. It's that would be the same thing. That's not what we're seeing. So maybe they do something like that. Who knows? But I think it's all very centrist to believe. I think that when you think about everything from your perspective, this is why Einstein is so interesting. Is one of the things he's quoting as saying is what would it be like, one of his thought experiments was, what would it be like to ride on a single beam of light? What would you see from that perspective? Which is profound in its own, because right away you realize that Einstein wasn't thinking about the universe from his centrist perspective. He was just thinking about the universe. What would you see from a beam of light? You would see everything happening really, really quickly. It would be flying through, and everything else would be happening really quickly in front of you. You would get to the future faster because you're traveling at the speed of light. But are you actually getting to the future faster? From that perspective versus the perspective of a human being? Yeah, you are. But from the beam of light's perspective, it's just an average day. He's just cruising along 30 miles per hour on his way to work. And his job just happens to be heating up our planet and making, giving us radiation from the sun that we so need in small doses in order to live on our planet. But from the other guy's perspective, from our perspective, you're moving instantaneously through time. From one perspective of a moment to the other perspective of a moment. But you're not actually moving through time. See, that's why people like this bubble idea of a craft. This idea of putting like a warp bubble around your craft or using a wormhole, because you take away that effect of time dilation because you're separating yourself. So theoretically, if I were to get into a wormhole at 3 p.m. today, I should get into, and at that time on Mars, it's, 4 p.m. yesterday. At the same time, I should arrive still at 4 p.m. yesterday on Mars. But if I were to travel there straight across, it would take me a few days and I would arrive a few days later. It'd be the same thing. But traveling through the wormhole cuts that out. What the fuck was that? The fuck was that noise? I have no idea what that was. I'll have to figure it out. Anyway, the whole point of this is as we get into more discussions about the brain and time and how we perceive time, we need to understand that that every single time we're doing it, we're looking at it from our perspective, from our center of perspective. When you're for example, if you're in the center of a black hole, you could watch the whole universe go by in an instant. But if you're around the perimeter of a black hole, time seems to go very slowly to you. If you're in the center of a planet, the entire universe appears to be going around you, even though you're nowhere near the center. Same thing from every other planet. So if those center beliefs are based on your center of perspective, then those beliefs would translate to being, maybe I'm wording this the wrong way. The more, here, let me word it this way. I got it. The way you view the world creates the way that you believe in it, and the way that you see it and perceive it. So, if I believe in the world as being this, all about me and my perspective, I'll never be able to see the world from somebody else's perspective, and they can never be empathetic to that person, or in general. If I don't see the entire universe from any other perspective but my own, I'm always going to think I'm the most divine being. I'm always going to think that I'm, the center of the universe. And these beliefs then somehow translate to our consciousness, because our conscious beliefs are also centrist, are also centered around ourselves and our lives. The entire universe seems to rule in a centrist perspective, to the point where one might think it's part of nature to believe in that. In fact, it probably is. It's probably a self-preserving mechanism in order for you to, preserve your life. Maybe to think solely about yourself will be the reason why you survive and your friend didn't. Yo, what up, yo? How you doing? What up, Ash? So it would be your perspective on time. And these I think we're almost hitting the point. When you go and look out into the universe, it's a survival mechanism. These people, if Jimmy is dying next to you, or for example, here's even a simpler example, right? I don't got to outrun the bear. I just got to outrun you. Let the bear eat you, and I survived. Alright, seriously, what the fuck was that noise? It's a very centered and self-centered way of looking at it, but it's the way that it is. It's the way of the universe. What is that fucking noise, bro? That's what I want to know. All right. All right. So if we look out into the universe, and if I have to outrun the bear, I'm fucked. But if I have to outrun you, I win every time. So being self-centered and centrist might be, wrong in many ways, but it's also a survival mechanism. It's a survival skill that we as a species probably need to survive. And this may be true on almost every single planet, where you go to that planet and you realize, this is not, you go to that planet and they think that they're the center of the universe. They believe in their God who created them in their image. Maybe it's just nonsense. Maybe it's just your center of the universe theory talking. If you think you're the center of the universe, so therefore your God must have created you and you're special because you're the center of everything. But in reality, you're just trying to survive, is what it comes down to. In reality, it might just be that that's from our perspective. But the other conclusion you could come up with that is, if I'm on my planet and I think those gods created me in my image, and then I go to your planet and you're a being with 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, 2 arms, 2 legs, 5, maybe 6 digits, maybe 4 digits, but maybe that was advantageous to your planet or not. But you get there and pretty much the same. Well, those beings say they were created by their God in their image. Well, maybe you're both created by the same God in the same image. It's just that you develop slightly differently because your planet is slightly different. You might have different levels of gravity. Your planet might be larger or smaller, might be more mountainous. Maybe you have more tectonic activity, maybe less tectonic activity. Maybe a whole different things. Maybe you got more water than Earth, less water than Earth. Maybe you're on that supersized Earth that they've discovered, where there's tons of water and tons of things. Maybe you're from one of those super water worlds. Maybe you come from one of those super water worlds and you got 2 arms and a head, but not 2 legs because you need the fins to help you propel you through the water. So, but they believe that they were created by their God in their image too. So maybe that belief stems from somewhere. Maybe there is a species out there that goes from planet to planet for their own mission, not for ours, for their own mission, from their own perspective, in order to populate the entire universe with their genes. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. We'll see you Thursday for games. We'll see you next Saturday for episode 57. And thanks for all the new people coming in and the old homies coming in. Much love, y'all. And we outie 5,000. Let's go.